groups. It means a lot to us. And as you can have just heard, we do record these sessions. Why? Because basically we love to share knowledge. I mean, that's kind of why we sent this whole thing up in the first place. So we're recording. If you're uncomfortable with that, please, turn off your cameras as well. So again, already said thank yous, but a little bit of an introduction then to who we are. So my name is Helen Garcia. My co-host is Ines Garcia. We are both Scrum Masters, Agile coaches. We love this way of working and meeting like-minded individuals, as well as lovers of Agile, haters of Agile, and everybody in between. If you're confused to why you're here, that's also okay, because tonight we are talking about questions. So maybe it's actually a good reason. So welcome to tonight's session. Now, a little bit of admin. So you are question words. If you've got a question, a comment, something interesting for us to hear, then feel free to just either off mute yourself. I mean, unmute yourself. It's probably slightly better English. Unmute yourself and ask away. If you're not comfortable with that, whack it in the chat. That's also okay. You could virtually put your hand up, or as I like to do, just put your hand up if you're on camera. That's also okay, to use our physical bodies as well. So you can do that. What else? Like I say, we're recording the session. You don't need to know that again. Time box. We have got 90 minutes. In fact, we've got a little bit less than that. See if my maths, 84 minutes left. Obviously, we do a bit of an introduction, and then we invite our guest speaker. Very exciting. Marjeta tonight is coming to speak with us, so that's good. And again, please utilize the chat box if you want to chat about things. Now, rock, paper, scissors. For all those people who have come here before, who loves that game? Oh, thank goodness, at least one person, at least two people, brilliant. And if you have not come here before, hopefully you know rock, paper, scissors. I am a massive fan of this. I play it probably weekly with my teams because it's a great decision maker tool. You can have yes, you can have no, you can have I don't knows in there, but you can also play it, as an actual game between two people. So we're going to give it a go tonight. Now, if you are comfortable to be show your face, then please go it. Otherwise, we're going to trust that you're doing this as well. And I would just love to practice. Can I see your best rock? Beautiful. Nice. We all know what a hand-shaped rock is good. Excellent. How about a piece of paper? Nice. Lovely. I love the different angles people go for. It's not always just this. I don't know if that says something about us or not, but who cares? And lastly, pair of scissors. Now be careful with this one. Depending on what kind of day you've got. Yes, maybe a different symbol to what sort of pair of scissors you have. So lovely. And Mike, I did see that very lovely pair of scissors. That hasn't come up before, so thank you for that. Brilliant, cool. So you all get it. You all know how to show a rock and a paper and a scissors. So the idea is I'm going to ask a question and you're going to show me a rock, a paper, or a scissor to the answer of that. Now, you've got a yes, maybe no. Hopefully my questions still align with that. Sometimes I realize I've messed up and it doesn't, but let's give it a good go. So the first question is this. People talk about questions as good and bad. Do you know what a good question is? Quite a few papers out there. Questionable. Okay, thank you. Second question is, let me rephrase the question. Truly means, I'll word it so I can get the answer that I would prefer. Oh no. Yeah, a lot of scissors out there. Okay. Okay, thank you. And lastly, so make it your strongest. Questions are outdated. Let's rebrand for curious statements. Ooh, a bit controversial, that one. Okay, brilliant. All right, well, I think you're suitably warmed up. Excellent. I'm going to hand over to Ines.
Thank you. All right, so curiosity may have killed a cat, but it can boost your organization and the things that we do. At least that's what I think. That's why I'm so happy that we managed to have today guest and subject on board. And Marjeta comes from communication background, like me, and she has a wide industries expertise, like from global civil society associations to government, public sector, entities, corporation, cooperative, NGOs, local communities, you name it. And in brief, Marjeta helps organizations and communities to have breakthrough conversations on complex issues. So do please tell us more about yourself and how you move the dial from what we most often encounter, which is divisive narrative, into deep and regenerative collaboration. So Marjeta, thank you for being with us, and please take it away.
Yeah, good evening from Slovenia. You know, Slovenia is that country that has love in it, unlike Slovakia, Slovenia, and all those other countries. So a good way to remember the sweet little piece of land with only 2 million people. So happy to be with you here. And I was actually initially invited to share more about the community that is called Art of Hosting. This is actually short for Art of Hosting Conversations That Matter, which is a network of practitioners on participatory processes. It's a network that has no organizational structure, no copyright, no boss, really a very inspiring self-organizing international global group of practitioners. And then I said, you know, it's actually quite challenging to really offer an experience of hosting in such a short time and in the format that you guys are usually having. But why don't I share one of the essences of our practice, which is actually the power, the craft, the art of questions. We often joke that we know art of hosting practitioners as are around whenever we hear, okay, what is the question that we are going to offer to the group that we are going to facilitate, host? And in my practice as a collaboration facilitator over the last 20 years, I noticed that I spent most of my mental capacity, energy, even time, either with client or later with myself or the small team that steers the entire collaboration process, on making the questions as relevant, but also as stretching and inspiring as possible. So what I'm going to do today is just share some of my experiences and hopefully offer also a couple of frameworks that can help you when you design the questions, either for yourself, for your teams, or actually in any context of your life. And now I have 50 plus years, and in this group, there are quite a number of us. So I guess altogether, we have many hundreds of years of experience, both in life, but also in different organizational settings. So as a host, I am going to invite you from time to time, of course, to also contribute your ideas, your insights, your questions, so that we can all learn from each other, including me, of course. So I'll keep inviting you to contribute, and it's all invitational, up to you whether you answer the call or not. And yeah, during today, we will be swimming between two islands. One would be really experience, starting with experience first, and then a few teaching / frameworks. It's not really preaching, it's again more of a few helpful insights that can guide you in your future life and work. And I'm also today on a new computer, a single screen. So if there is going to be some time when I'm transitioning from this plenary presentation to a digital presentation, this is a moment to just, take a deep breath, recenter, come back to the space, and just, practice mindfulness and potentially even patience. And if there's something that you need that will help you follow better, be it a question or, you need some support here, or I'm not sharing what I thought I was sharing digitally, please let me know. Ask for what you need and offer what you can. So with this, I am going to share a screen, and just as the girls said before, you see it relatively well? Give me a sign. Okay. Oh, here are a few impressions from my work, and if I give examples how questions can be powerful and potent, I can share a couple of questions from this week, the groups I have been working just this week here in Slovenia. So with one group, we were exploring the question of how to design local sustainable energy community solutions that bring value and benefits also to low-income families. And the question here was, what does social justice look like in times of climate and price crisis? Another group that I worked this week was on, okay, what will it take to minimize forced marriages of underage girls that are becoming more and more frequent now that we have a wave of immigration from Muslim Roma countries south of Slovenia. And okay, there were more. I think it's enough to stop here. What I have learned is that the question that I pose really steers the conversation in a certain direction. And let me pause here with my context and give the ball over to you with the question. What might be one powerful question from your past that perhaps impacted the course of your life? And if you find that question as you look back on the course of your life, please share it in the chat so that we can get a sense of how our lives have been impacted. Maybe it's a question you ask yourself or a question that others asked you. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Is a question in the chat. Thank you. Any more? Where is everything going? Sure. Why can't I do this? Thank you. For those of you who can't right now remember any, you might also ask yourself, what would be a question that would shift the course of my life potentially now if I ask myself or somebody else did? What am I waiting for? Do you think answers are more important than good questions? Is this really it? Why are we doing this way? Thank you. And this was the first experiential dive. For a second one, I invite you into a quick look at these questions here, and let me know if you don't see all of them by any chance. And pick one that calls you and spend a few moments of reflection in your own time and space. And my question to you is, what do you notice that is happening within you as you are encountered with one of these questions? If you put attention to your body, to your energy, also to your mind, to your spirit potentially, anyone willing to share, how does the question right now affect you? You don't need to answer, you share your answer to the question, but more on a meta level. What do you notice? My HR went up, emotions, sad, my focus turns inward. You're also welcome, if you wish so, to speak, to use your voice. That's also okay. My phone. HR is heart rate, I guess. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have turned my life around. That's one person who did it. So I'm surprised I have answers to all questions. Yoo-hoo! What we often notice is that questions stir something in us. And a powerful question is often one that makes you think a bit. And I see when I ask a really powerful question, how people's eyes often go up, like they pause for a second. They usually don't have a ready-made answer. So a question that is powerful, and I'm not saying all of those are, but they can be a good start for our exploration. For me, are those questions that create unresolved tensions. You know, something gets moving in us, and it can keep moving well after we heard the question. Challenge assumptions, create insights, touch deeper, and very often spark new questions. And let's have a next short reflection. So here is the story. Imagine that your in-person work is 15 kilometers, which is what, 10 miles away from your home, and your car consumes a certain number of liters or gallons of fuel. And for financial and environmental reasons, you want to use less fuel on your way to and from work. That's the issues. And the question that we might ask is, what vehicle do you suggest I use instead? And spend in your own, again, reflections, a couple of brief moments answering this. What might be a vehicle? And you can think, or you might write in chat if you want. It's more for your own reflection of the landscape of answers that come up. And now the same context and a different question. What possibilities are there to use less fuel? And with this, I would love to open our collective dialogue a bit. Is there anyone who wants to share? How do you experience answering first question or the other, or what are the difference? What comes up for you as you see these two questions one next to each other?
Can I answer?
Yes, please. Would be great to hear some voices as well.
Thank you.
Here.
So I think while answering the first question, of course, when you put forward this question, there were different options that I had in my mind. But the first question pushed me to choose one of them. And I don't know what were like my assumptions or my biases to come up with that option. But with the second question, all those options I had with the first question, I can now like respond with them. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other quick reflection?
I guess for me, the difference is about focusing in the outcome. What are we trying to achieve here? Which would be the second question versus the other one, which is not focusing in the function even, but on a particular item, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay. I think that if you flip them around, like the second question to me feels like that could, if that was the first question, then you wouldn't even have to think about vehicles necessarily.
Yeah, because the second question is way broader. And the first one is way more limited, just the vehicles, and then it of course expands a lot, like which work do you even do, or could I even change work if I as a answer to these questions, etc., etc. And a last experiential activity before we go more into framework. Can you think and not write it, just first think of it and keep it to yourself? What might be a question that would make people in this group smile? What could be a question that would make people smile here? And if you have a suggestion, and if you're willing to share it and gently test the smiling, please give us a sign, maybe raise a hand manually or electronically, and we'll give you a chance. Not everyone at the same time. Here we have, they are coming here in the chat. What made you happy today? Here's the first one. The second one, what is your most embarrassing memory? I'm watching those people who are here. There are some smiles, yeah, not all. What would I look like in a pink ballerina outfit? Yeah, we're getting more smiles. Thank you. So with this, we had a few inlets into our exploration of questions. This last one helped us see how question can, shift energy, or how questions can actually lead to a more narrow set of solutions or to a broader set of solutions. How questions can even impact our lives or the course of a team or a project. And with this, I will share a few frameworks that helped me understand the architecture of questions. And the first question to ask in a question is, okay, what assumptions might be hidden in the question that I'm asking? So, you know, when I said what question impacted your life, there is a strong assumption that there was a question that impacted at least some people's lives. And that's a very natural part of a question. And it's good to be aware of the assumptions and check them and see whether they serve our goal or whether they hinder our goal. Let's see a couple of examples here. Okay, when elevators were first introduced, that was in the second half of 19th century, there was, of course, a big novelty and everyone loved it or feared. There were also people who feared them, but nevertheless, there was a growing affinity, of course, for elevators, especially in taller buildings. But then at the same time, as things were progressing, evolving, people started to ask questions. You know, these elevators are actually quite slow. So the question was, okay, how can we build faster elevators? And the answers, as you can imagine, are usually such that they require a lot of resources and time to change an elevator. But then there was a smart person who asked a different question. What if the ride got more interesting? Guess what the very fast answer to this was? How to make a ride more interesting in an elevator? What people installed in them?
Some music in the background?
Music was one. And right now I don't see the chat, so there's something written, please, my co-host, share it. Well,
so we've got TVs and maybe the glass panels were installed.
The biggest shift was made when they installed mirrors. Oh, now everyone, of course, was happy to spend some time checking, and the ride seemed to be way faster. So here you can see how a very different solution was generated with the change of the question. Okay, next one. Typical example in the last decade and maybe forthcoming decades as well. Instead of how can we compete with the Chinese, how can we collaborate with the Chinese? It's typical shift from competing to collaborating. Another one, why are nurses leaving our hospital? Again, a very common question. And the question can be asked in a different way. How might we make our hospital magnetically attractive for the best medical personnel? And even in your mind, if you go quickly through potential answers to one or the other, could probably see a big, again, difference in the expansiveness of answers that come up. So with this, questions in some ways are faithful. They can change trajectory of life and can shift energy. And most importantly, in my experience, they're a very powerful tool, not only in groups and meetings, but also in our personal lives. And you might go quickly in your mind through the questions that you ask yourself, starting perhaps early in the morning. What's the first question that often comes up for you as you wake up, or what is the question that you go to bed with, and of course everything else in between. And just gently see in what way are these questions nourishing your life and yourself in a way that you appreciate, you enjoy, or whether there is potential to play with more questions, different questions. Okay, now a few more things here. And these things in some ways are quite basic, and it's good to remind ourselves. So one is the range and the focus, especially when we are in some future solution creation with others, it's quite good to know what kind of range are we aiming at, because sometimes we ask questions that are way too broad and then they can seem overwhelming, almost disempowering, or, you know, some people enjoy these larger scale questions, whereas other people are more practical, and there is room and time for all of them. It's just good to find a good flow among them. They might even be too narrow, you know, like, okay, we have this question about climate urgency here, you know, there could be a very narrow question. For example, how do we get 10% discount on our electricity bills through community energy projects? It's a good question, and from my experience facilitating similar environments, I know you can get way more than 10% discount. So please enlarge the question. How could we make sure that benefits from community electricity projects stay in the community, not go to investors, etc., etc. So make sure it's not too broad or too narrow. Open and close questions, this is quite a known feature. And again, both of them have their natural, organic place in our, especially idea generation, project, problem solving, especially when we are opening the dialogue. It's good to ask as many wide open questions, you know, what might this look like from another perspective? What else we could be if we had infinite resources? What would this look like, etc., etc. Go broad and also deep very often. So this is what we show with this divergent phase. And of course, at some point, then you need to start prioritizing, selecting, and this is when more closed questions come handy. Closed questions, meaning the questions that have usually a certain number of options out of which you choose, you know, are we going to meet next Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday? No, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's a close question because we are converging, coming to some final agreements and next steps. So there's a space and room for both. And it's good to know what serves when. And sometimes, as you know from your own experience, people are in this first ideation phase, perhaps uncomfortable with the this more chaotic phase, gray zone, as we call it, and want to go quickly to, okay, what's now the solution? And the invitation is to make sure you get enough friction, enough tension, enough fire in this mid zone before you go and converging, so that you really get quality dialogues, quality outcomes. And another thing here, as for the question architecture, of course, is also I'm hugely generalizing here, and still it's a good reminder that can be questions that are for most of people or a lot of people more empowering, and questions that are more disempowering. Empowering, of course, are the ones that from which we learn, are energized, rejuvenated sometimes, and disempowering can be the one that leads to more downward spiral, even though for some people, you know, it works just vice versa. I come from a Slavic culture, and we are world experts at suffering, or even sometimes enjoying the suffering and bonding and suffering, and looking for who is guilty and who started it, etc., etc. So a lot of my facilitation work is in shifting this downward spiral and turning it upwards. One of the helpful models here is from the Inquiry Institute, and this choice map that very clearly captures the judger mindset and the learner mindset, and prompts us that when we find ourselves to be more in the judger mindset, you know, why are we such failure, so stupid, why bother, etc. That we can notice, and if we want to, shift the trajectory, switch the lane, and start asking, okay, what is really going on here without my interpretations? What is a pure observation? What do we agree on? What can we learn from it? What are maybe new openings, opportunities that can be noticed in this new context, new environment, etc., etc. And the key thing is here really the mindset, because we like to say that judgment and curiosity cannot really coexist. So you're usually either in one or in the other, and you do have a choice. You do have a choice to choose which one you are following at some point. I will very soon give some space to more questions, but before this, there is my last invitation. I really see questions as doorways that either open or close, or expand or narrow the sphere of possibility. And so I do invite you to reflect on the questions that are guiding your own thinking process in your work, in your life, and expand the repertoire of the questions that you're asking yourself or others. So I'll just briefly pause here before we go into a collective exercise, but first individual, then collective. Is there any comment and questions, any very different opinion, any observation from your life, insight, idea? It would help me to connect with where you are and how useful or not my sharing has been so far. Give some kind of a sign.
I think it's important to know. In what context are you presenting this information? Is it in a social situation or work situation?
Let me see if I heard you, because there were a bit of a sound issues here. So I'm hearing that it's important to know really what context it is, and then, and depending on this context, what's a question that really serves. Is this what you?
Yes, whether it's a work situation or social situation. Are we raising the question in work situation or social situation?
In work or in a coaching? Did I get you?
I think it was in work or in a social. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
In work or social, yeah. And do you have an insight, an idea about that?
In work, it's more learning situation. I think in work, it's more a social. In work, you're trying to learn something with the question. In a social situation, you're asking. Yes, I think you're discovering different things. In work situation, is more about the person.
We are having a bit of sound issues, Alex, I'm afraid.
You want to find out more about the person you're talking to.
We are having a few sound issues, Alex. If you want to if you mind putting it in the chat, that would be excellent. Sorry about that. Sorry to cut you off. We do have another sort of insight as well from what are you sharing seems to be so obvious when you say it, but it's so insightful, and I'm finding this really useful. And I think it's just general kind of feedback, Marjeta, just as insights. And I think for myself, this whole idea of enhancing questions rather than questions that may inhibit is really interesting as well. It sort of feels like it comes from the coaching background, which I find, yeah, very insightful with it. Mike, I think you've got a question. Oh, we can't hear you. This is whilst Mike is typing that, are there any other questions?
Mike is going to put it in the chat as well. Thank you. Please share the title of the book. It's from Inquiry Institute, Mary Lee Adams. Let me quickly see. I'm going to back into the this change your questions, change your life. Change your questions, change your life. Wow, it's very similar to the title I gave today, even though it wasn't intentional. Interesting.
Yeah, I put a link as well in the chat about the book. One thing that came to mind, I don't think I realized so much about that I use is this idea of diversion and conversion. In the Agile arena, one of the things that you do is in very short loops, review how you do things so that you can improve what you do. And on those moments, it's very easy to deviate and the time runs out and oh my God, yeah, we need to get better, but nothing becomes very tangible and feasible. So I tend to use 2 diamonds. The first diversion, so we can explore what just happened. And out of this happens, the first conversion is about, out of all those things, what would we be willing to invest time and effort on? And then you get to one, and then from this one thing, diversion. What's the range of possibilities of things we could do about this one thing? And then at some point, it's sort of try to do the conversion to, all right, which one we're going to try first.
Thank you. Okay, now back to experiential moments, and afterwards we will still have more time if there's something to share or to ask. And first, it's an again individual invitation, and that is one question that is animating your life or work, life/work, whatever, right now, for which you would love to get some inspiration, insight. And you are very welcome to write down a question, and potentially one that you would be willing to share with the group. And we were not going to go into any kind of answers today, so we'll just stay in the question arena. Let's take a few moments. Write it down somewhere for yourself.
Would you mind if I ask the question that Mike was looking at? Yes, perfect. Thank you. So when you talk about disempowering questions, do you equate this with bad questions? I get the general idea, but it seems to me that people are often so scared to offend that they don't have honest conversations, understanding that the intention is not to hurt, but sometimes it does.
Yeah. Do you equate this with bad questions? No, I don't. I don't really believe in bad and good in my life, honestly. You know that beyond the ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there. So that's my take on life. And I have noticed that some questions drain people's energy, personally or in groups. And again, you know, it can be one experience for one person and one for the others. So it's just good to notice that. So this is part of the question that Mike asked. And the other is, yeah, people don't have honest conversations. That's so true. And one of the most powerful questions for me is, what's the conversation that we need to have and we are not having? Now, it's a super powerful question to me. What should we really, really talk about? You know, what are we avoiding? You know? Now, again, there are probably culture differences as well. There are cultures that are much more direct and find it much easier to dive into questions that bring discomfort in people. So it could be, for example, in intercultural research, this would be the Netherlands, Israel, for example. And then there are cultures where communication is much more indirect, and it takes even more craft how to ask questions. And my last comment here, intention is not to hurt, but sometimes it does. Yeah. We also say that there's a difference between intention and impact. You can have one intention, the best intention in your own understanding, and still the impact is very different from what you intended. So within teams especially, it's always good to practice, you know, feedback loops in a good way so that we learn about the impact that we have. And one excellent exercise also with questions, yes, and we'll do a similar thing later, is, okay, you offer a question and some people can not answer, but expand, build on that question with a question, so you can together share the responsibility for the questions. I think there's more in the chat. I think that the question, I think questions should be framed in simple, straightforward language. The tone and voice modulation is important. Absolutely, absolutely. From what inner space am I coming when I offer the question? Am I that investigator? You know, why did you do this? This is one way how the question lands, or whether see, but why did you actually decide for that, to do that? You know, when I come from, whether again, I come from a place of curiosity or from a place of judgment, this makes a big difference. And it's really good to recenter and check our deeper intentions. And, you know, very often curiosity is a better bridge than judgment, which is very much, okay, what I think is right rather than collective exploration. Questions always come first and people get defensive. I'm reading in the chat. We do not explain why we're asking the questions first before asking the questions. That's so true. It might be sometimes that a question would need a bit of an intro in order to land well. Thank you for all these insights and observations. Questions should be well timed and placed. Yeah. Fine when you don't feel pressurized, but good point. That's true as well. And yeah, thank you. So I assume you have that one question written there for yourself. And now I will guide us through a few more helpful hints how to expand questions when we are not happy with them. So one way to go is to kind of broaden the sphere of possibilities. For example, what if you could swim in Ljubljana rivers and canals? Ljubljana is the capital of the country where I live in. No, it's not just how do we keep our city tidy, but what if we could swim again in the main river? How might somebody from a very different context or background see and solve this issue? What could success also mean? What if we saw this as what could our school also be? What would it take, etc., etc.? So we can go broader or we can go deeper. No, okay. What's the point? No. Why is it important now? How come it's important to you at this point of time, etc., etc. Any way that you see to a little bit deepen the inquiry. Then, helpful to challenge assumptions, really ask yourself, okay, what might be in the question, a limiting belief that is ingrained in the question and we had not been aware of it? What if the opposite is true? Well, what I really love also about questions is this fourth invitation to invite intuition, to go for the questions that we have no answer to. Now, okay, if you saw this problem as an image, as a symbol, as a metaphor, what could it be? What does your body tell you? No? What color do you see it? It's very helpful because it's kind of, again, brings people out of a tight space, nurtures more creativity, and very often some insights that are especially connected with metaphors as very useful tools in collective, both collective inquiry, creation, creativity. But that's already another story for another time, maybe. So with this, an example could be, if I ask, myself, how can I increase satisfaction in my team? I could also invite a playful exploration of how else could I even ask this question, even though it will be a little bit different, but to grow our muscles in question crafting. Okay, what would even satisfaction look like? How would you know your team is happy? What image again comes to you? A number of things. This is also an inlet into a collective exercise. I am going to invite you now, and that is going to be connected with the question that you wrote for yourself. And if you're up for it, if you are willing to receive some other people, colleagues, not answers, but expanded questions to your question, then you're invited to open this link that I put in the chat, in which there is a table and with a number of options. So on this first page, I have copied those 2 slides on challenging assumptions, inviting intuition, and then further there is an example of the satisfaction in my team. Let me go quickly again into screen sharing. I will first give us some instructions, and then we can take it from there. Do you see this well enough on the screen in terms of now how can I increase? Yeah, okay, thank you. So there's an example that I just shared, and the invitation for you will be to pick one of these other small tables. Maybe just go by the color that calls you, and on the left side of the table, into the left column, pose your question, and then everyone else is invited to offer a bit different question that comes up for you on that, something that can be broader or more intuitive or deeper. And it's really a playground. You don't need to find the best, the most correct, powerful, relevant, useful question. Just let yourself go and play, and again, practice flexibility with questions. So there are a number of possibilities here. So some can start maybe from the top. Just bring your how do you say that in English? Your scroller, mouse, whatever, your personal signature into one of those tables and share your question. And then we will spend a few moments also visiting other people's questions as a self-organizing activity, and then we'll come together and see what comes up. So you can start from the top or from down, and yeah, please share generously your both questions and questions to questions. So no answers, just question on question. If there's any question, what I'm inviting you to, I at this point invite you to just unmute yourself and voice it so that we can follow well both of these platforms that we are juggling with now. There's a question, how can we change our situation? How can I increase that? This one is from before, but the first offering is here. And yeah, please spend a couple of minutes in devising questions to questions. I see we have two questions here that what should we do about the third party, where we have very little knowledge, insight, understanding actually into what the issue might be. It's a bit narrow. But this other one's, why does society value monogamy more than other relationship types that has not received any upgrade support yet? So let's spend another, let's say, max 2 minutes on this activity. So now it's your time to offer your generous ideas and insights and also some, lightness and fun to this playground. Any comments or questions as you are looking at the both the original questions and the upgraded questions? Anything that struck you? Anything that made you think or expanded or narrowed your imagination? Going to stop screen sharing and trusting you have the document still open if you want to. For those that came later, I will repost the link because a few people joined or probably left the group and came back.
I think it's a really interesting exercise with having an original question and then just giving yourself a bit of time, which we probably don't give questions time to explore a different way of phrasing something. Because it's usually quite reactive, isn't it, to ask a question rather than something that could be prepared.
Yep. It's an excellent exercise actually to do this as a team as well. When you see that you're not happy with a question that is guiding maybe your meeting, your problem solving session or whatever, to just say, okay, let's stop, let's have a starting question and then just play with a question to a question, and then very often one leads to another, etc., and then we can come to something where we will have a very big yes. Okay. Okay. So this can be just an ongoing thing as we are then now continuing. I will share one more tool and then closing with the questions that can help us bond well or end meetings well. So check in and check out questions, which are very low-hanging fruits from our art of hosting also. Experience and community and very easily applicable. But before we go there, something that I have also found, especially in my, again, Slavic culture, super useful. And let me see. So questions are also an excellent way to shift the conversation in a way that you would believe might be more productive. For example, in my work with group, there's really a lot of complaining and whining and pointing fingers into who's wrong, etc., etc. So what I often do is I come from this strong assumption that also when people are complaining, they are actually sharing a pain because something that they value is not present or has not happened in the way they hoped, wanted to be happen. So as much as possible, I try and go to, okay, what is the quality, the value, the need, the longing, the aspiration that is behind the complaining? And then see how can we use this tool from, I think it's actually from design thinking, this question of how might we, and put the two together. How might we, blah, 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 and then achieve a shared objective, a higher purpose, a deeper value that we all share. So it's a super simple formula, actually, that comes useful when things get stuck. You know, how might we positive aspiration? A couple of examples here from my practice, very recent practice. We have tried it all and it never worked. Why bother? How might we look at this situation afresh so that we would generate possibilities we never imagined possible before? Or, you know, I put so much effort and no one notices. Oh, I'm fed up. I'm going to quit, etc., etc. My first thought is, okay, what's underneath here? What is this person really needing, longing for? Okay, yes, probably for acknowledgement. And can we create systems where we really acknowledge, and maybe not just acknowledge, even celebrate contributions of each other? Now it's a very different feel and energy and attitude when we ask that kind of a question. Another helpful tip is, you know, when people say, okay, if we grow, we are going to lose the spirit, the essence, the soul of who we are. And I know that especially in teamwork, people often then kind of fall victim. Okay, it's either A or B. In my experience, it's never just A or B. There is always, with a bit of creativity, something that goes beyond A and B. You know? So it's very helpful also to craft questions in, okay, how might we find a solution that holds both paradoxes? We live in a world of paradoxes. We need to be able to hold them all and find solutions that will, as good as possible, dance with both paradoxes. So, okay, how can we grow and honor the essence of who we are at the same time? And I know as facilitator, when I give this kind of not just framework, it's a permission to think in this way. People come up with better, more creative solutions than if you just go for one or the other. It's question itself opens the door and gives really kind of an inner permission, allowance to create in a bigger way. So this is HMW, how might we, which also gives agency to us, not to somebody out there or up there. So it is one an empowering type of question usually. And yeah, also noticing where we are now, it's also a good time to remind us of questions as wonderful generators of connection to oneself, connection to each other, connection to the purpose of why we come together as a team, as a group, as a project, at a meeting, whatever. And in our hosting community, and actually in all my project work and collaborations, we practically always start with a very quick check-in, even if it's just, you know, how are you arriving today? One word, whatever. It makes a difference. It brings us to the same reality, to the same moment and place. It's a good bridge from where we had been before to where we are landing now together, this group and this purpose. And there's actually a whole list and a helper that is called a website that is called Check-in Success. There will be a link to the website at the end of the next slide. I think it's has a wealth of ideas and questions and information, wonderful resource. No, so here are a few questions. Some are from that resource, many are from my own practice, from different other question wizards that I've been inspired by. So, for example, there are questions that can have connection focus. You know, we just get to know each other a little bit better. We create this human-to-human bonds that are actually the glue for all the other collaborations that we are doing. No, it's always good to have a little bit of a surprising element in them as well, because then that's what makes people more alive, more animated, more present. For example, what's your hype song, the song that would play as you enter the arena, for example? I'm super curious. It's a question I have no idea what the answer might be. And this is also one of the features of a powerful question. Just give a few moments before I go to the next one. Now, if anyone is interested, I'm also super willing to share these slides. If you ever want to revisit, up for you, and why not? Sharing is caring. You can pose a checking question that is more work related or purpose related. No. For example, what's your intention here? What's a gift that you are going to offer to our meeting today? It could be a skill, an attitude, a question, task that you're going to offer, maybe make notes, whatever. It does make a difference to land together with a short check-in question, even before we dive into the topic itself. You can play and try this in different contexts with your collaborators and see whether it makes a difference or not. Then, of course, we also have checkout questions, which is also a marker of a transition from the shared time and space together, usually into the future, or just really checking out from the space in a good way. Here are a couple of options, and there at the bottom you have the link to the check-in success, which is actually an expanding, growing repository of questions, very inspiring, useful resource for all kinds of contexts. And now, by way of wrapping up, and it's good to have in mind when crafting questions, okay, what's really the purpose? What do I want to have achieved with this question? No, is it more divergent, convergent? Is it shifting the energy, getting unstuck, whatever? Context, of course, is super important, as one of you has said already. No, what's a question that matters to all people present? What's potentially a question that can overcome divides in this situation? For example, what is one currency that we all share here as we gather? Could be such a question that I sometimes use when I work with very divisive issues and stakeholders that do not really want to sit in the same either virtual or in-person space together. Now, there are questions, and it takes some energy and discipline to craft them beforehand. What are assumptions? How might the question empower, or maybe take the power away from people? And by way of offering a question here for you to leave with, it is mainly for your own, again, journey and reflection, and you don't need to share it, or you could in the chat if you wanted to. Still, no. After hearing all this, what would be a question that would be your gift to yourself in as you leave the space, or in the coming days, in the coming whatever months. And so I just pause here and give you a few moments to reflect in your own space on that. We have some sharings, offerings in the chat. How can I make sure I incorporate what I have learned during this session in my work and personal life? What do I need to grow? How will I be more intentional about my questions at work and home? Thank you, because all these questions are not just the gifts to you, they're actually also, you know, gifts to each other as soon as we get to hear them. I'm also going to share the link to this presentation. It'll take me a few moments to come to a different, to this, my drive here. Again, those moments of, here I am, as I said, moments of transition, but it's also time for you, if you have any last questions or comments that you want to offer. Now is the time before we close this session today. I see one more question. How do my questions affect others? Thank you. Thank you so much for this. Now, starting to explore what's the impact, what's potentially the alignment or the gap between the intent and impact. It's a big question. And I think this is the presentation in the chat. Can somebody just check and see whether I put the correct abbreviation here? Yes, it is. Thank you. Yeah, so it's definitely a small gift that I can share from my side here. And yeah, I'm aware it's 20 past the hour in this. Thank you for Renee for bringing more visuals into this space as well. And anything else that needs to be said before we close here, either from the organizers, host, or anyone else here?
I have a question, but I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So we've talked a lot about questioners, and a lot of what you said puts a lot of onus and responsibility of the person coming up with the questions, as it should be. But it seems to me that it might be also interesting to ponder on the responsibility of the listener. So I quite often tell people, you know, if somebody says something that offends you and you think they've said something wrong, maybe ask them if their intention was really what you took before you just jump into judging them. So as a listener, we have responsibilities as well.
Thank you. Absolutely. You know, with the question goes only that far, and then the interpretation has a lot of power as well. And thank you also for, if I get it correctly, for encouraging us to check, you know, not to go ourselves directly into judging, and rather check. So am I with you, or are you, you know, wanting to do this or that, or, you know, not, again, going into curiosity rather than judgment ourselves is a very powerful tool for forging connections and collaborations as well. Thank you.
Conversation is a cooperative responsibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. And meetings are as well. No, it's we say that in a meeting there is no one. In a bad meeting there is no one who's innocent. You know, we share the responsibility for the quality of our experience. And questions again can be used. You know, how to even check, like if I'm not happy with a meeting, so say, I'm noticing. We are going off topic now, and I would just like to ask, how is it for you? Are we okay with that and want to go in that direction? Or we find it more useful to stick today with this topic and perhaps spark this new topic for later? So again, questions could be a good way to navigate our own discomfort with what is happening in a certain group. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is also in the chat some quotes I found on this topic. Before the meeting, judge someone by their questions rather than their answers. Voltaire. Successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers. Tony Robbins. There are no right answers to wrong questions. Ursula Le Guin. Thank you for also these nuggets from a wider circle.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marjeta, and thank you everybody. I'm wondering if there are any last questions or comments at all, just before we close. No, it was, I mean, just from myself, really, it was a really fantastic session, I thought. I mean, I've never actually, you go to lots of meetups about questions, and I found this particularly insightful and particularly brilliant, the way that you've presented and got us really thinking. It certainly got me thinking differently. So thank you for that. That's a real massive value added, certainly to me. And thank you to everybody else for joining us tonight, or this morning, or this lunchtime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then my last question, as we are leaving this space, it's very similar to one that somebody offered in the beginning, and it's great to revisit it. And that is, what would you do next year if you had no fear? No need to answer now. Let it visit you when time is right. Revisit you. What would you do next year if you had no fear? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And please, as Ines has also put in the chat, we are always looking for feedback. You know, we are, with the Agile mindset, continuous feedback and improvement, sorry. So head over. We will be sending out the link, and there'll be other elements, other sort of tips that have been put in the chat in there as well from Marjeta, and the slide deck as well. So please look out for that. I know that was a bit of feedback that we got last time. So thank you for that. Other than that, over and out, folks. Thank you.